goals, they're kind of like a GPS. I call it the goal positioning system, because unless you have an actual destination to put into your GPS, it's just going to route you in circles. So many people, they build, habits, systems, routines for their best days, their highest capacity days, where really you want your systems to function for you on your worst days. And when you're able to do that and build in that boring, monotonous level of consistency, then you will get to where it is that you want to go.
Meet Sandani. It's 11 a.m. on a Saturday, and she can't get out of bed. One of her children are tugging at the blanket, the other one climbing the mattress, the third busts through the door with a ton of energy that she cannot match. Truth is, she's exhausted. She's exhausted because she feels so overwhelmed. Sandani is a management accountant, and on Monday, she has to get right back into the thick of things. Over the weekend, she always plans on having quality time with family and being able to rest and recharge. But that never happens. The weekends consist of her thinking about work and worrying about finances. The uncertainty of her industry, of where things are going, keeps her in a state of feeling unsure about what the future holds. She looks at her children and thinks, I have to be able to help and provide. She looks at her husband and thinks, what if my husband loses his job? The worry seems to never stop. And because of that, she feels like she can't slow down. Taking time to be able to rest, for her to recharge, for her to take care of herself, it doesn't seem like an option, because the real fear and worry around being the mother she needs to be, as well as to make the impact at work she wants to make, feels like a heavy weight on her chest that she can't remove. Today, I'm speaking with Corrie LoGiudice, keynote speaker, executive coach, TEDx speaker, and founder of the 5 Overwhelm Culprits. Corrie's work is all around helping leaders to discover the hidden patterns that lead them to feel drained and overwhelmed, and be able to have more clarity, lead with more confidence, and have the energy they need to be able to serve while ensuring their health and well-being is taken care of. And I look forward to hearing how Corrie would help someone like Sandani to reclaim her energy and to feel like herself again. My name is Jay Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. So Corrie, we were just talking right before we started recording about the Tony Robbins documentary, I'm Not Your Guru, because you said you saw it on my website and how it affected me. And apparently it had a similar effect on you. So take me back to that story of when you saw that and how it affected you after you've watched the documentary.
Sure. Well, I mean, to give a little bit of kind of like background and context leading up to that moment.
Yeah.
So before I was doing the work I'm doing now, for over 15 years, I worked as a senior vice president running my family's very large electronics distribution business. I was always the youngest person in the room. I was always the only woman. I love the work that I did, but I was going through a period where things just felt weird, was like the best way I could describe it. Like things felt off. I had everything on paper you're supposed to want to have. The house, the white picket fence. I had just had a baby. So I was discussing this, I guess you could say, dissatisfaction with my drive, because part of it also too was I was commuting 20 hours a week to get to work.
Wow.
It was 2 hours there, 2 hours back. So I was discussing this weird feeling that, how annoyed I was with my job. And my therapist asked me, Corrie, have you ever considered becoming a coach, like a life or a business coach? Which to me, I thought she was insane. But then I was thinking back how should I answer her? And if I was going to be honest, it was yes, I had, because a couple of weeks before I had seen the Tony Robbins I Am Not Your Guru documentary on Netflix when it had just come out. And I remember watching him like be able to ask folks questions and in like a moment see that person's, thought pattern change, and having that kind of an impact on people. I'm like, oh, how cool would that be? But I immediately dismissed it because here I was the third generation. I was supposed to take over this business. Like my life plans were made for me. So who was I to think I could do anything different? And she, at that time during the session, she's like, I've been watching you manage, trauma and crises in a way that my other patients do not have the ability to do. If you could teach people how to do that, you could have a real impact on people. And it became this kind of like turning point conversation for me that after I went through another traumatic life event, that I decided, you know what, I'm going to go all in on this. If I really do have this capacity to do it, let me see if I can make myself the case study to see how that would work. And it did work. And I've been coaching and speaking on that system ever since. But it just was so funny that it was the same kind of like turning point, that Tony Robbins documentary. Who would have thought?
Yeah, it had such an effect on me. The opening scene where he is speaking to the young man who is contemplating suicide.
Yep.
That really stuck with me. And the way he approaches him, he makes him laugh, right? He gets him to laugh, and then he just starts asking
psychological
him
safety.
Right. And then he just starts asking him some incredible questions. And he's doing it with so much intention. And he's done it so many times, and you watch him and it's just deeply inspiring to see how he moves him from a state of deep depression to hope and to confidence. It's amazing. For anyone, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend watching it. Really, really insightful. And so you mentioned there was a lot of personal challenges that you've had to go through. So take me back. So I know there was a time in your life where there was a series of things that you had to work through, some adversity. So talk to me a little bit about that and how you responded to all of that adversity.
Sure. So in a 5-year time span, I went through probably more than most people experience in a lifetime. So it was everything from I had a miscarriage. I realized I was in an abusive relationship. 15-year abusive relationship. I also at that time had just had a baby. I left said relationship, had a very high conflict divorce. So that was about maybe 4 years roughly. And then when all the dust had settled, I had thought my life was on the up and up. I had started over from scratch. I was doing really well. I then lost my post-divorce partner to suicide and was the one to find him. So that was really kind of like the turning point for me, because the conversation we were talking about earlier with the therapist was in between the divorce and the suicide loss. And she's like, hey, I've seen you really like totally, kill it in life after your divorce. If you could show people how you did what you did, you could really impact people. So at that point, when I lost my partner to suicide, feeling that deep despair, I'm like, okay, I am the case study. How did I do it? When I went through the divorce and the miscarriage and everything else. And it was 5 consistent things that I had noticed that if I was able to address it, I got unstuck and kept moving. I wasn't overwhelmed with the situation. And that kind of set the foundation for all the work that I'm doing today.
Yeah. And I really want to dive into that. I know that your book, The 5 Overwhelm Culprits, right, just came out recently, and we can get into that. But first I want to get into like, what do you notice that people do that agitates the problem? Like what are the patterns that you see in others where you're like, that's the reason why they're falling into the spiral and they stay stuck?
It's honestly, it's inaction. It's continuing to act as if nothing is wrong, where really all overwhelm is, and so many people too, they view it as they're a failure. Right. I know I even felt it too back when I was going, it's like, oh, like I'm a failure. Why did I pick this relationship? Why did I allow this behavior? A lot of like self-defeating kind of mindsets. But really all it is data, because it's showing you that something in your current reality changed. And that's what's causing the overwhelm. So in looking through that for me, it was very easy for me to identify, okay, like as one example, things are going great. I had an infant. Suddenly I'm overwhelmed. My life completely changed from the way it was before, because everything I was doing on a day in, day out basis no longer worked. Right. So when you're able to identify what that is, and again, take action, not being stuck in inaction, but being able to identify what that is that you need to do to keep moving forward, it makes it much easier to do so even when you're under tremendous pressure, or in a crisis. So it's inaction that causes you to stay where you are. To be able to hit the next level, you have to be willing to go over and above where you currently are at.
Yeah.
In terms of action.
Inaction is, would you say that's the reason for that is because people are seeking out things that are normal to them and what's safe to them, and they're not so willing to take a new action. They want to keep things the way they were. Is that what causes people to fall into inaction, or is it more of just a fear around doing something new?
It could be a number of things, and that's really where the culprits come into play.
Okay.
For a lot of times, it may be just complete and utter lack of clarity, right? Like, okay. I don't know what I want, right? For other folks, the fear side that you were talking about, it could be linked more to confidence. Like, I'm afraid to do it because if I fail, then I'm going to have to, tell everybody why I failed, right? And that's an underlying subconscious fear. There are so many different reasons why you're not taking action, which is why the, identifying which of the 5 culprits applies to your situation can be so impactful.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into those, the 5 culprits, if you don't mind giving a bit of an overview for our audience. And of course, there's more in the book, but I would love to just get a sense of what you recognize in yourself and what you see now in others that helps people to identify what's holding them back and to work through it.
Sure. And the good news is they are really easy to remember, and they all begin with the letter C, and they are lack of any one of these 5 things. So we mentioned the first one before was a lack of clarity. Mm-hmm. So it's not just so much knowing what it is you want. A lot of us are good with that. Back in the day when I had the infant and everything, I wanted the house, the white picket fence, the family, the kid. I still felt weird, right? Something was off, and I was talking to my therapist about it. I had lack of clarity. At that time was my overwhelm culprit. I didn't know what I wanted in life. I didn't know why I wanted it. When I was able to identify that, it made it that much easier for me to change my circumstances so that I could get unstuck. The second one, which we briefly talked about too, is lack of confidence. So it's not just so much knowing what it is you want, but you need to know why you want it and believe that you could do or have whatever that is. And confidence is an inside job. So many people, especially I find women more so than the men that I've worked with, they're constantly seeking external validation before they do something.
Yeah.
They're seeking that extra certification or that extra thing to kind of prove to themselves that they have the skill set they need to do what they need that they want to do. Where really you gain confidence through taking action and failing, right? Every time you do it, you kind of test that and you gain confidence as you do it. The third one is lack of community, right? So famous speaker Jim Rohn once said, we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So if the people that you're choosing, because again, we curate our communities, we choose them. If the folks surrounding you don't know how to do what it is you want to do, don't believe it's possible, or worse yet, they're going to hold you back because it doesn't benefit them in some way, shape, or form, you're going to stay exactly where you're at. The fourth one is lack of conditioning. So when I say conditioning, I'm talking about conditioning your mind and your body. So it's physical health and wellness. I view this kind of from the standpoint of, you could say, like high performance athletes. To be able to perform at a very high capacity, your body and your brain have to be functioning at 100%. That cannot happen if you are not sleeping, if you're not hydrating, if you are not fueling yourself with, clean foods. And especially for working women like myself, this is usually the first thing to go out the window because we are so busy taking care of everybody else that we don't take care of ourselves. But when this happens, we become the bottleneck in every single system that we're in, and you will stay stuck where you're at until you address it. And then last but not least, the final culprit is lack of consistency. So many people, they build, habits, systems, routines, even SOPs, for example. These are all great things to help with mental load. But one of the challenges and traps I think that most people fall into is they design these for their best days, their highest capacity days, where really you want your systems to function for you on your worst days, right? And when you're able to do that and build in that boring, monotonous level of consistency, then you will get to where it is that you want to go.
Yeah, I love these 5. I love them, and I'd love to kind of dive into each one a little. Let's start with clarity. You said before that you thought you had clarity, right? I want the house, the white picket fence. And then you realize that's not really what you want. So talk to me about like, okay, how do you help someone really gain clarity on what they truly want, not what on the surface appears to be what they would want, but it's not actually meaningful or purposeful for them?
Sure. Well, what ended up working for me, which is the same way that I work audiences through now when I'm doing keynotes or workshops or when I'm doing coaching, it comes down to 2 or 3 specific things, in terms of clarity. First one is being clear on what your values are. So many people, they have no clue what their personal values are. I remember during my divorce, I had worked with a coach that had asked me what my values were. And I was like, what are values? I had no idea. And from a leadership perspective, even, it's super important, having values within your organization and making sure that your personal values are aligned with what the organization you represent are, because otherwise everything that you do is going to feel misaligned and you're not going to feel fulfilled in the work that you're doing. So that would be first, making sure that you have set core personal values, and values can change too, which was really where I had gotten tripped up, because things that I had valued in the past had changed after I became a parent.
Yeah.
So understanding too that values shift and change with you, because we are not the same person that we were 5 years ago. So then from there, figuring out your 5-year vision, like what exactly do you want out of your life in 5 years, but making sure that it's aligned to those values.
Yeah.
I find to be the most impactful. So for me, when I had gone through and had done these exercises back during the divorce, I had just had, an infant. I had identified my values were, if I'm remembering right, family was definitely one of them, health and wellness, career, and what was my 4th one? Travel at that time. The one that was interesting was family. So for me, when I had written down family, and the other thing I recommend too when people are doing this is don't censor yourself. So I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to say like dream scenario, this is what I would love. So under my family 5-year vision, I had written, and mind you, I just had an infant, I was freshly divorced, that I was going to be remarried with 2 more kids and another one on the way. So I was looking at, I wanted 4 kids and a husband, and I was just divorced with an infant. Like completely not realistic. But spoiler alert, it did actually happen. During the pandemic, I went from being a single mom of 1 to a married mom of 4, just in time for that 5-year vision to become complete, because I remarried somebody who had 2 kids and we had another one together. So the path actually came true. But if I wasn't clear on exactly what it was I wanted, I wouldn't have seen the opportunities that would have allowed me to be able to create that life for myself.
Yeah.
So, and having this strong vision, which is why I think the 5-year vision is so important. 5 years is great because it's not 10 years and that it's so overwhelming. 5 years is very easy to break down year by year what it is that you're looking for, but it's also just enough time to really kind of, if you look at life like seasons and chapters, that would be like the close of a chapter, right? It's like halfway through a decade, things are rapidly changing. So it's a great kind of like time frame for that. So those would be probably the 2 that I walk folks through to start with, because then from there, unless you know where you are now, in terms of like your values and everything that you stand for and where you want to be, you can't identify what's getting in the way of that to know where you need to go to move forward. So those are the 2 places to start.
I agree. I think that you're right. People are not taking the time to really know what their values are. And when they set their vision, it's so often on things that like don't relate to real life. Like, for example, if I said, yeah, in 5 years, I want to be making $1 million a year, right? It's like, well, you don't experience $1 million a year. You don't experience that.
Why? Why? Do you want
exactly.
It? So,
exactly why?
Mm-hmm. So to add to what you just said, another part of my experience too. So the career column, right? So for my career, when I wrote that 5-year vision, I wrote I was going to be, like traveling the world, working remotely. I was going to be adding revenue streams for my family's business. I was going to be growing the business. And for me, what's interesting about that too is my family was in wholesale distribution. We got paid moving boxes from locations. So there was no working remotely in that. So completely unrealistic. But when I had actually gone through and I experienced the suicide loss in particular, it hit me because I had done that exercise, why I was off for so long. And it's because family was such a strong value for me. I thought my life vision was aligned because I was working with my family in the family business.
Yeah.
Right. So that should on paper, right, work. But what I didn't address, which again, overwhelm is usually caused by some sort of a change, the addition of my son. So having my son, I was not getting to spend time with him because I was spending so much time in the family business. So from there, once I experienced the suicide loss, it became crystal clear for me at that point. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be able to accomplish what I want on this 5-year vision if I stay in this role. It's just not going to happen because I didn't have the flexibility I needed to be with my kid. I didn't have, just from a systemic standpoint, I didn't have what I needed to be able to more or less deliver out the rest of what my 5-year vision was, most importantly, getting the time with my son, as well as having, freedom and flexibility in terms of remote work. So I decided to start my own business to do that. But had I not gone through and actually clarified all of that, I never would have known where to go. And I wouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing today, because the work I'm doing today was actually in that vision.
And you had the mindset to be adaptable, meaning you didn't say it needed to be this way only through your family business. You knew what you wanted, and you were open to a path that you maybe didn't intend to go down initially, because life, the world, whatever you want to say, right, showed you that this is another way to get to that ultimate experience that you wanted for yourself.
Yes. I like the way I describe it to my clients is, goals. They're kind of like a GPS. I call it the goal positioning system, because unless you have an actual destination to put into your GPS, it's just going to route you in circles. Right. Because you're just going to end up going back to where you started. You're just going to end up in circles. You need to have some kind of an actual clear destination to put in the GPS. Yeah. And what's going to happen when you put stuff into a GPS? There's going to be traffic. There's going to be roadblocks. There's going to be construction. You're going to get diverted. But because you have the clear destination in it, it's going to make it easier to see other opportunities to get to the same destination, which is why it's so important. So many people get kind of locked in that, like, okay, well, this is, the goal, and this is my plan to execute the goal, and it has to stay on this exact trajectory or else I've failed, where life doesn't work that way. Instead, you need to be in the moment looking at what opportunity can I take today that will help me get there tomorrow.
Yeah, I love it. I use similar analogy often. I use flights, like, going from Newark to LAX, and you know that that's where you want to land. But as you fly, the flight pattern may adjust because of wind, because other planes are coming through. And here's the other one, Corrie, which is maybe as you're flying, you realize, I don't want to go to LAX. Maybe I want to go to Seattle instead. It's like that's fine too. It's just, you got to start going in a direction, right? Like otherwise there's no direction. You got to pick. Yeah, you got to pick and start going down the path, and then be open to adjusting that path as you go. And I do want to ask you about confidence, because you really brought up a good point. I hear it all the time too, Corrie, which is people saying, well, I need the evidence first. I need the evidence before. And you mentioned that that's oftentimes what holds people back. And you mentioned women oftentimes can struggle with this. And I want to get your perspective on this. How does someone who feels that way, how do they cultivate genuine confidence, even though they haven't done it yet, even though they don't have the evidence? What is required for them to be able to build up that confidence?
Well, they have to actually take the action to build up the confidence.
Right.
Because you can't just think about it and get more confident. It doesn't work that way. It actually works through taking the action on what it is. So usually what I recommend for my clients who get stuck on stuff like this is, what is one super small, low risk thing that you could do today that's in alignment with whatever it is that you're looking to build confidence on, that you could do today? And that's it. For some folks, one thing that I find is fascinating, when you look at things like boundaries are a confidence problem. You're afraid that you're going to more or less like upset somebody, by setting your boundaries. So you don't have the confidence to set said boundary. So for a lot of folks who, let's say they're trying to build confidence with boundaries, it's testing out a small boundary instead of a big one. Right. Yeah. So it might be like saying like, no, I can't come, for lunch that day, and not giving a reason. That might be the change, right? Where before you wanted to over explain the reason why. It could be something as small as that to then compound and then make bigger asks and bigger demands in terms of boundaries moving forward with that person once you see when you set the boundary that, the world didn't burst into flames and we're all still here after you set the boundary.
Yeah.
So that's usually what I recommend. It's what is the smallest action that you could take today? The other thing too that I think is important to look at, especially when it comes to confidence, is a lot of times we are assigning other people's beliefs to our skill sets as opposed to evaluating our own. So when I go through work with my clients, I'm asking, what do you believe that you don't have the skills for? Because a lot of times they do have it. They've just been told by other people that they're not up to snuff, or like, oh no, you should be doing this instead of that they're absorbing other people's thoughts and not really evaluating what they themselves feel. So a lot of times too, if they're not taking action on something, it could be that it's misaligned because it's not something that they even wanted to do, that they're feeling pressured that they need to take action on it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's building
I
the
do.
confidence in themselves to say, no, this is not something that I need to be working on. I need to be working on this instead because this is what I truly believe.
Yeah.
I need to,
Yeah, it's a
evaluate.
completely different way of thinking that is challenging for people at first, which is to say, you don't build up the confidence, then take the action. You take the action to then build up the confidence. And in that's a mindset shift, Corrie, right? It's a completely different mindset shift. And I just know from my own experience that that's how it is. I could think of so many examples where I had no reason to say yes to something because I had no confidence prior to, because I never did it. I raised my hand for, a VP asking if I wanted to help support this new initiative when I was working in corporate years ago. I'll never forget this moment. I had no confidence at the time that I could do it. And I got thrown into the mix. I figured it out. And I'm so grateful I did, because it built up the confidence in me to do this thing that I never did before. And so I guess there's a aspect of being courageous and being bold in order to build up the confidence.
I think to add to that too, there's also needs to be a certain level of trust within yourself.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people around us will see our abilities before we could see them in ourselves, which is definitely what was demonstrated in your scenario. Somebody, above you had said, hey, Jay, you should, come and take this role. You'd be great for it. They had that trust in you. You needed to then trust yourself to say, it's safe for me to do that. This person sees this in me. I'm going to give it a try. Where a lot of folks, they don't surround themselves with the right people to be able to mirror that belief for them, that they can see it and then trust themselves, which then becomes more of a lack of community issue than a confidence. So sometimes you'll have them kind of go hand in hand. But in general, you need to trust yourself to try and fail. Actually, this was another thing I wanted to mention too, because I found it was a very helpful kind of mindset shift. It's one for me that I've been ingrained with because I'm a third generation entrepreneur. So I'm actually the first person in my family that ever got a college degree, because everybody was just starting businesses and running their own thing. So all I know in life is trying things and failing, because entrepreneurs are literally professional failures. They try things so many different times until they actually find something that, makes an impact in the market, and then they make a ton of money. So having that kind of like an entrepreneur mindset when it comes to failure, it's like, hey, I'm going to try it. The worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to have data on then what I shouldn't do next time I try the thing. Viewing it more as what lessons am I learning instead of it's a failure. Because truth is, there's really no such thing as failure as long as you learn something from it.
It's so true. I just watched this interview, Corrie, the other day with one of my favorite artists. His name is John Bellion. And he's not as famous as other people, but he's behind so much of the great music out there. He's behind Justin Bieber. He's behind so many of these great artists, and he himself makes music. And he said something that I'll never forget. He said, your success is directly proportionate to the amount of risk that you're taking to fall flat on your face in front of everybody. It was something along those lines. Essentially,
it's true.
Yeah, right. If you're willing to embarrass yourself and look like a fool and take this huge risk, the level at which you do that will be exactly proportionate to the level of success that you achieve.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's powerful stuff. And I was like, I couldn't agree more. And as an entrepreneur, I think you can agree with this. There's so much to that. What you also said that I thought was powerful was when you have people around you who believe in you, and
Mhm.
that's the community part. Because I'm
Yep.
grateful that I've had people like that around me who gave me the belief in myself because they believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself that much
Mhm.
yet.
Yep. Yep. I'll tell you what, like we mentioned before, my book just came out. The best experience of my life was being able to sign a copy and send it to that therapist that we were talking about, because it would not exist if it wasn't for her and what she saw in me. But I've surrounded myself with people like that my entire life. Folks who
Yeah.
saw my ability to speak when I wasn't a speaker, folks who saw my ability to coach when I wasn't a coach. Um, so making sure that you are surrounding yourself with people who, the way I usually describe it when I'm working with audiences is how are they helping you or how are they preventing you? Right. So if you look at the
Mm,
5 top people and then divide, and you look in like 2 different columns and list out, okay, all the different ways this person's helping me, all the different ways this person might be preventing me. It gives you a really good audit to know, do you have the right people in your circle for this phase of your life? Because truth is, your needs are going to change as your life evolves and your needs evolve. So the folks that supported you great, 5 years ago may not be the people that you need to help support you today based on whatever your challenges are.
yeah. And with that, I mean, it doesn't have to be so binary where like, you're ending a relationship entirely and you
No,
completely break
definitely
that
not.
off, right? I think that so often that's where I can imagine someone listening would go to, which is like, oh, so you're telling me like just remove this person from my life entirely? Like,
Definitely
no,
not.
no, 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 definitely not. Just shift the relationship if needed. Maybe the amount of
Mhm.
time and energy, or even as much information that you share with that person could be
Mhm.
different according to what you're looking to achieve at that season in your life. And
Well, sure, and
the other
it's
thing, go ahead.
no, I was going to say too, it's not saying goodbye to that person. Sometimes it's just deprioritizing time with them to make space for somebody else. So, great example of this that I could share is back when I was going through the 5 years of hell. When I love my family, I worked with my family at the time. My family had no experience with divorce, no experience with abusive relationships, no experience after I had the suicide loss. There was nobody I knew that had experienced a suicide loss. And that's a very complex kind of grief because you are angry at the person at the same time as like deeply grieving them.
Yep.
So my family loved me and stuff, but I knew they couldn't support me in that capacity. So I found a suicide loss support group, and with the time that I took where I wasn't spending with my family, that I was spending with the suicide loss support group, I was able to get what I needed during that phase. That then, when I was no longer grieving it in the same capacity, then I had that space and time again for my family. So it's not all or nothing. It's how am I taking what time do I have available to me right now and energy that I have? And am I making sure that I'm exchanging that energy with people that are going to help me grow during this specific period of my life?
Yeah. I mean, we are such social creatures, Corey. And when we have support from people, it can be what drives us to be resilient and to work through adversity in a way that we could never do on our own. And I want to get your take on Sandani in this story where she's really struggling with worry and worries around finances, worries around not fulfilling her responsibilities. And I think worry is a big problem for people.
Mhm.
The fears of what they could lose. How do you help people to navigate worry?
Well, worry in particular, worry comes down to fear, right? And when you are worrying and when you are in a place of fear, you are not living in the current moment.
Mm,
Right? Because anxiety, and worry is you're thinking about stuff in the future, whereas if you're feeling depressed, you're thinking about things in the past, things that have already happened. So, number one, what do we have to do to get you into the moment today to know that you are safe today? Right? So, building
mm,
that psychological safety. A lot of times, too, I find for a lot of folks I work with, the fear isn't based in today, it's based in something that's happened in the past that's triggering them or bringing up old beliefs that don't necessarily apply to today. So it's getting clear, just asking the question like, last time you felt this sense of worry, when was that? What happened? Who was involved with it? what's similar to that, to what's going on right now. So again, not taking it from like a therapy approach, because I am not a therapist, even though my therapist I was talking about before has tried to get me to go to get my license, but I'm like, no, I got to know this one. But to get the clarity that you need to be able to say, oh, okay, I know where this is coming from now. I see that it's not based in reality today. So I can choose to drop that worry and focus my attention elsewhere, where it becomes an empowered decision instead of something that you're just managing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the word choice. I really love that word, to choose, because that's something that no one can ever take away from you. So Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, right? Where he really writes so well about this. And that is our power to choose what we focus on, our power to choose what the meaning that we're giving to our situation. And what's natural for anybody is to be inclined to focus on fears. That's part of being human. Yeah. And what Sandani, I think, really needs is to tap into that power of choice and to realize that all these fears are stories that she's telling herself, right? I mean, it's just stories. And that's what people get caught up in, Corrie, right? They get caught up in their stories.
Well, I would say too, for Sandani in particular, and I did a whole section in my book on this, talking about fears, but from the male perspective versus the female perspective. For women in particular, and this is backed up by science and data, I don't remember the numbers offhand, which is why they're in the book. For women in particular, there's a deep fear for security, right? And it really comes down to, especially when you have children, needing to be able to provide, food and shelter and stuff like that for your child. Where when you look at men in general, a lot of their fears are surrounding performance and whether or not they're going to be able to fulfill that level of security for others, right? So it's not based on the actual security, it's how are they able to deliver on that security? Whereas women, it is on the security. So for somebody like Sandani, who's having these financial fears and stuff that are tied to their work, that's also tied to the economy today. Childcare is more than housing in all 50 states at this point. All the things that are currently threatening our security, having some compassion with yourself regarding it, that it is normal to feel that way. And to, again, just use it as a point of clarity. Like, okay, this is how I'm feeling today. What do I need to do so that I feel secure? Right? So for some folks, it might be, I need a 6-month emergency fund. For some folks, it might be something completely different. It might be, I need, new clothes to feel more secure in my financial situation. You don't know what that is unless you ask yourself. But having those fears, it's entirely normal, and you are not a failure for feeling the way that you're feeling.
That's a really powerful distinction, the male dominant fear versus the female dominant fear. How I understood that was it's always more complex for every person, but in general, the male fear is more around worth, right? That's what I was like, yes. Worth, right? And female, it's more about security.
Yep. It's like for male, it's more like performance based. Yeah. Can I do the thing? Am I, strong enough? Am I tough enough? Whatever that looks like. But for women, it's, can I take care of my kids and myself?
Which is why,
will we have shelter?
Yeah. Which is why, as you said earlier, a woman could be more likely to sacrifice her own well-being for the sake of security.
Yes.
And I'd like to talk a little bit about that too, which is, in Sandani's story, and it's many people's stories, they are in a cycle where they're working so hard, they're putting in so much effort that they just get so drained. And it's like this time that they have on the weekends or whatever is more like just an escape, right? It's just to escape from it for a little bit and then come back, versus it being more recovery, recharge in a healthy way. And you were talking about conditioning before. So
yes.
Talk to me a little bit about how someone like Sandani could be able to carve out more time to recharge, but not because it's something that's like, I need the break. It's more of, no, it's part of my life and how I stay conditioned.
I would say too, for folks like Sandani, at least based on the story that you had shared, that her weekends are not that rest.
Right.
Especially if you've got kids and stuff involved, you're still taking care of everybody all the time. Plus everything that you don't have time to do during the week because you're working gets pushed to the weekend. So I don't know about you, even me and my husband right now, that's when all the grocery shopping, all the meal prepping, the lawn, the laundry, all that stuff happens. Not everybody has resources to be able to hire outside help to help with that. And with today's economy, it requires 2 working parents at this point, especially if you have young children. So we have this scenario where you have households where you have both parents at this point that are completely and utterly tapped out, mentally, physically. They're either being demanded on at work or they're being demanded on at home by their kids and their family, or some of them even with aging relatives. There's a lot of folks in the sandwich generation right now that they're dealing with aging relatives as well as children, and they're in a really, really tough spot.
Yeah.
So when it comes to conditioning, the important part, physical and mental health and wellness, it cannot just be a weekend thing. It needs to be a daily thing, even if it is small. So it could be as small as like 30 minutes that you take for yourself to do something for yourself. The other thing that I think that is important to look at too is the age of your kids. If you are a household that has kids, if you have an infant, like, just gonna be honest with you, you ain't gonna get much sleep, and that ain't gonna change. But it's a short period, right? Yeah. You got like a year that you have to function like that. So making sure too that you're viewing, because a lot of folks, I think they get very, very locked into the schedule without looking at seasonality of things either. We have periods of our life where we're going all in, 110 miles an hour. We have periods of rest. You look at seasons on Earth, right? You have spring, summer, winter, fall. Each one of them serves a specific purpose for growth and energy. We need to view our lives the same way. So if you are in a period right now where your kids might be younger and it's really, really difficult for you to carve out that time for yourself, as little time as possible may be just what you need to get through the season. And then you could claim more of that time for you later during a period of rest, where maybe you are doing an hour, or maybe you're taking on an activity like my husband, for example, likes to go bowling on Mondays, with his friends. That's like his, mental decompression time. It's time for him to do something for himself. So when we have time in our lives for him to be able to do that, we make sure that we schedule that in. So it's knowing it's not all or nothing, but making sure you are doing something, even if it is small, to take care of yourself. Also, to certain things, it doesn't matter how much time you have, are easy to do. Like, no reason you can't be drinking enough water, right? Like, that's important. It doesn't cost anything. It's just more of a practice. Same thing too, if you're looking at getting a certain number of steps in a day. There are lots of different ways that you could even approach that. Park a little further away when you're parking in the parking lot to walk into the building. There are ways that you could create habit systems and routines to help support your health and your mental wellness. But again, it's making sure that you're intentional with it, determining specifically what it is you need, and committing to making sure that it's happening for you. Because if it doesn't, then you're on a fast path to burnout.
Yeah. And the word I was thinking, and you just said it, is intentionality, is being intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the problem is when we're caught in this resistance to it all, right? Which is to say, okay, I have a newborn baby, I have an infant, let's say, and I feel this resistance that I can't go to the gym and sleep the way I want. And so that state of resistance keeps me in that spiral leading me towards burnout. Mm-hmm. Because I haven't yet accepted what is. And I haven't accepted the season. And so what you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, it's accept the season that you're in and be intentional to create the routines, habits that will allow for you to have that time that you need for conditioning as much as possible without resenting that it isn't the way it was in a previous season.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And even for what talking about, like the parents with the newborn, right? You still need to get sleep. I mean, I know when I had my youngest, there was a point that I had like no sleep and I went off the deep end because I was like, what your brain does when you don't get enough sleep. It's crazy. Yeah. So sleep is actually very, very important, but recognizing that season will help you find other ways to get that sleep. So they always say, you sleep when the baby sleeps. So it might mean that you leave the dishes or you leave the laundry, or you leave other things that you feel compelled that you need to take care of in order to feel quote unquote productive so that you can have that sleep. And again, it's just for a season. It's just for a cycle. It's not forever. The dishes will eventually get done. It just doesn't have to get done today.
Yeah. And this applies to so many different examples. I worked with somebody once where he was starting a business, Corrie, and it was like he was always in meetings and it was so busy. And he's like, Jay, I don't have time to go take care of my physical body, go to the gym. I don't have time for that. And we talked through, I coached him through a system where he would just take a moment to do 10 push-ups in the middle of the day and then get back to work. And I'm like, how long do 10 push-ups take you? Not a lot of time. Yeah. But if he did it consistently, he was able to get to 100 push-ups and 200 sit-ups every single day, or a few days out of the week, without having to leave the office and go to the gym. He found a way to do it. So I would say to anyone who feels like they're in one of those seasons, you can always find a way. You can create a system. It's not as catastrophic as your mind makes it out to be, that, there's no way I can fit this into my crazy schedule. Right.
Yeah, no, it's funny too, because as you're talking through this, it's reminding me of a shift I have to make in the next week. We were talking about this before we hit record here. My kids are about to be out of school for the summer. And I built my business in a way that I'm with them full time during the summer. They don't do camp. We actually call it Camp Mommy. But one of the ways that I adapt my business for this, where it also adapts for my physical and mental health and wellness, why it's important, when I wake up earlier than they do in the morning before they wake up in the summer, and I'll do my workout, and then I will come at my desk and I will take an hour to go through all of my messages, talk to my team, do whatever I got to do to reset for the day. But while I'm doing that, I'm on a walking pad. So I'm still taking care of everything I need to take care of for myself and for my business, but I still get to hang out with my kids all day. Again, it's having that intention, and everything is done by design.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. And all of our listeners, there's always a way. Corrie just proved it, right? There's always a way. She's running her own summer camp, right? She's running her own summer camp, and she's still getting her work done, and she's still exercising. There's always a way. And Corrie, I want to ask you, if you were to meet Sandani in this story, let's say Sandani attends one of your talks and is waiting to speak with you after you get off stage, and she tells you her story of what she's going through and the challenges she's facing. You're listening to her, and then you have a chance to ask her a question or two to really evoke some different thinking and get her to get unstuck. What would you ask her, and why?
That question would be pretty clear for me. It would be, what do you want, Sandani?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't working for you. What would be working? What's that definition for you? Because unless you are clear on what the ideal scenario would look like, you can't backwards engineer or design it based on where you are today to get there. Right? It's always, where you are today, where you want to be, and then what's getting in the way of that. Unless you are clear on what it is you actually want and why, you're going to be stuck exactly where you're at.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. And for all of our listeners to learn more about the great work Corrie's doing, her website is corrielo.com, CORRIELO.com, where you can learn more about the keynotes, workshops, coaching she does, and the new book, The 5 Overwhelm Culprits. And there's also a quiz, I believe, on the front page of your website.
There's a quiz that'll tell you your culprit. So if any of these, as we've been talking through them today, resonated for you, and you want to validate that, hey, that's probably my culprit, you can take the free quiz. And in addition to that, you'll get 2 weeks of content that's specifically for your culprit to help you with it.
Oh, that's incredible. We'll put that into the show notes for our audience as well. Corrie, thank you so much. This was amazing. I'm so grateful that you took time out of your day to chat with me.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like I need to rewatch I'm Not Your Guru by Tony Robbins. Fantastic documentary if you haven't watched it on Netflix. Definitely worth watching. And there was a lot that Corrie and I connected on. There was a lot of things that I think we could take from this conversation. I'll do my best to synthesize it into 3 major takeaways. The first one is the 5 overwhelm culprits. Corrie was able to categorize them into 5 specific areas, and they all begin with the letter C. if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's because there's either a lack of clarity, confidence, community, conditioning, or consistency. And start there to take inventory of, well, what is it that's lacking for me right now? If you're feeling so overwhelmed, it could be a combination. What I think is important, though, is there is a bit of an order to that, which leads me to the second takeaway. The second one is clarity comes before everything else. We were talking about how there needs to be a destination where you're going in order for you to be able to work through overwhelm, because you have some forward momentum that you are going to take with you towards a destination. So having a very clear goal, right? What that vision is for you, and knowing that is critical to your ability to be able to not fall into a spiral of overwhelm. And the third takeaway is to build systems for the worst days, not just the best days. Most people are designing their routines assuming they're going to be at full capacity and everything's going to go perfectly. What you want is to just find the smallest possible action that you can take, and something you could do consistently, even when you're feeling depleted, even when you're feeling like you don't want to do it. As long as it's intentional and you're doing something that really energizes you, then you're going to be able to create more of that consistency through even the most difficult seasons. And join us on Friday, because I'm going to dive deeper into this, specifically around energy. If you ever feel like your energy is depleted, your energy at times is holding you back from taking action, you just don't feel like you have it in you, then Friday's episode is going to be a perfect way for you to learn what does it really take to build up that consistency. We're going to look at 3 categories of energy producing activities. I'm going to go through some real examples and help you to be able to not just identify what are your energy producing activities, but also how do you commit to them? How can you build that consistency? So we'll dive into that on Friday. And until next time, thank you so much for listening. I am rooting for you.